was a busy man, a very busy man. Why drive his own car? Why subject himself to traffic on I-75, then Route 16 through the inner core of the city? Why waste an hour's precious time? Why? Recalling now, when the children were very young, he'd made it a point to spend at least 20 minutes exclusively with them each weekday evening, reading them to sleep. He'd been so young a father when Rick was born, he'd seemed even to himself a boy, comically ill-suited for such a responsibility, and for such a privilege, seated at the bedside of a drowsy child, turning the stiff, elegantly illustrated pages of a new edition of Mother Goose, trying to keep his impatience from showing in his voice. For though he loved his babies, little Rick, little Katie, he'd been a very busy young man in a notoriously competitive profession. Of 60 newly hired men, quite literally this was 1967, they were all men and Caucasian. Only 3 or 4 would survive to be promoted up through the company. And Chester Jensen was determined he would be one of them. So he tried not to think of spending these 20 pleasurable minutes with his children as a waste of precious time. As his mother had said, the time when children are really children is so brief. Ordinarily, on such a trip, a routine sort of trip, he'd have been oblivious of his surroundings, chauffeur-driven in one of the company cars, protected from any insult on the street, any danger. Seated comfortably in the deep-cushioned rear of the limousine, shielded from the glare of the daylight and from the occasional rude stares of strangers by the dark glass, he would have scanned the Wall Street Journal, always provided for passengers in the company's cars. And then he would have concentrated on his work, scarcely aware of traffic, of the deferential driver, of even the luxurious vehicle in which he was being transported. Why had he wanted to drive himself? Well, he'd wanted to. No special reason. Just to be alone, maybe. Was that it? The rare solitude of an hour's drive? No special reason. He would say to Diane if she asked, if upset, as surely she would be if he told her, "Look, please, I don't like to be interrogated. You know that." It had been a wet, glistening day. Early April. A glare to the sky and the pavement like pewter. He'd left the house in Willow Lake at 8 o'clock. The meeting was scheduled to begin at 9:30. He had plenty of time and was in no hurry, pleasurably alert, appreciative of the way his car, a recently purchased Acura, held the road, navigable as a small yacht in placid waters. Amused to think that, yes, he enjoyed driving a car, simply driving, to no purpose save driving. An overgrown American boy, and why not? Behind the wheel of a car there comes into being an indefinable, yet unmistakable self that exists nowhere else. If, at least, the driver is alone, not distracted by conversation, the presence of others. He'd been driving on Decatur, which Route 16 became, in the city, the shabby warehouse district near the Stevenson Memorial Bridge, where once his father and his uncle had owned property. Leased to van companies, storage companies, Schifra and Sons bookbinding. There, at the corner of Decatur and 7th Street, was the aged red brick building in which Schifra's had been located, now tenantless. The name Schifra had fascinated him as a boy. It made him feel somewhat melancholy to see how derelict the neighborhood had become. Potholes in the streets, gutters and sidewalks littered with debris, including broken glass, shut-down stores, burnt-out and abandoned buildings, panhandlers and winos on the streets even at this early hour, and pitiful human shapes huddled in doorways or stretched out, sleeping, comatose, dead, on filthy sidewalks, in the wet. 5 miles to the south, Decatur Avenue was a respectable commercial street. Beyond that, past the city limits in the suburb of Elm Ridge, its name changed. It was a leafy residential street, quite attractive. Mr. Jensen, Chester's father, and his uncle, now deceased, had hastily sold their urban property.